everyone. Welcome to the next instalment of The Doctor Will See You Now. I hope your reading's going well, or you're listening. I hope you are having a fun time with all the amazing crime fiction that is available out there, and that you've got some time to do some reading during the summer. Now, you may recall a couple of episodes ago, we started to delve into crime fiction and otherworldliness or supernatural or things that could not be explained. Well, I've got another author for you in that same vein, but we all know that every author is unique with their writing, their style, their characters. So it gives me tremendous pleasure to welcome S K Tremayne, Sean, into the consultation room. Sean, thank you so much for being here. How are you?
I'm very good, and thank you for inviting me.
It's an absolute pleasure. I must confess that your work was new to me when I was asked, would I interview you? And it's always one of those really thrilling moments when you think, oh, well, I'm sorry we never got to know each other sooner. Because wow, you combine things that I find especially appealing and intriguing. And and I thought as well, the other word that came to mind was sensual. I think you write in a very sensual way, and around the senses, which I thought was lovely.
Thank you. I'm very flattered.
No, thank you. So, by way of introduction, S K Tremayne, Sean, is a best-selling novelist and award-winning travel writer, and I will come in and ask a little bit about that. A regular contributor to newspapers and magazines around the world. Sean's debut psychological thriller, The Ice Twins, was picked for the Richard and Judy Autumn 2015 book, and I'm sure that many of you out there thrilled to that debut novel and have been looking forward to Sean's latest offering that we're going to talk about. The Ice Twins was a Sunday Times #1 bestseller. Now, his latest novel, The Drowning Hour. Sean, would you do the honours and give us a waft of the book?
It's just a proof copy, but it's got the cover on it, so there you go.
Look at that. Glorious. I really love that image as well, and it encapsulates that notion of the island that we'll that we'll talk about, and the property on that island. Published by HarperCollins in June 2022. Now, he writes under the name Tom Knox as well. You are so versatile. And when you write as Tom Knox, you specialize in archaeological and religious thrillers. So I would suggest to you, readers, listeners, if you wanted to get value for money, I think this is one of those authors that just, their range of work is tremendous. So if I might start off by asking you, do you see yourself as a travel writer, a journalist kind of writer, or are you a fiction writer, or do you see a fusion? How do you identify?
That's a good question. Nobody's really asked me that before. I guess storyteller, I think. But I tell stories through my journalism, or I do quite a lot of journalism. I write about politics and art, and obviously travel as well. But even when I'm writing a travel article, I like to give the article a kind of narrative form. Yeah. So you take the reader on a journey from the beginning sentence through a couple of emotions. There is an arc, and then you give them a nice resolution at the end. So even within an article, I'm looking for that beginning, middle, and end that you get in a classic story. So yeah, I think what summed it all up is telling stories.
Telling stories, storyteller. Wonderful. And I wonder, and I often ask this, if people have either different series or do different kinds of writing, and it's a bit like children, you shouldn't ask, is there a favorite? Because nobody has favorites. But is there, if they told you, I'm really sorry, Sean, but you now have to limit yourself to one, either style, genre, literary expression, what would you choose? Do you know?
Oh, that's very tough. I really don't want to choose, but but for fun, in a way, it might be the archaeological thrillers, the Tom Knox books.
Okay.
But that's because I haven't written one for ages. So it would be nice to, it would be something different to go back to them. And they were great fun to write because I made sure I went to all the locations. And I always chose really interesting locations so I could go there. So I choose the deserts of Peru or jungles in Brazil or the deserts of Namibia. And I literally always went to them and explored them, which is just brilliant fun. It's work, but it was great. So that part of them was intensely rewarding. And also I could just have really fantastical plots that you can't do so much with the psychological thriller.
Yeah.
You've got to be a little bit more realistic in these. I love writing these as well, but they're very different kettle of fish. So for sheer fun, I would do the Tom Knox books, but probably for more writerly satisfaction, the psychological thrillers.
Now, this is the first time we've ever met, and so I would love to know, that moment where, Sean, you become a writer of whatever kind. I mean, was writing always on the cards through school, through education? Because the way you were talking about archaeology, I wondered if you had sort of like, at one point you thought maybe to be an archaeologist.
Well, my dad's a writer. That's quite important. So I had that in my family. He wrote poetry and novels, and he's still with us. He still does. And so that's very formative. But also, I was in love with stories when I was 5. I remember telling my parents stories that I'd made up at the dinner table, age 5 or 6. And I was in love with books. And I was also in love with the romance of escape. I grew up in quite a small, boring to me, English town called Hereford. And especially when I was a teenager, it was so dull. I wanted to escape all the time. I would look at atlases just to look at exotic places. So, and of course, when you can't fly off to Siberia when you're 12, but you can escape in your mind. So, through stories. So I would tell myself stories of what I would do if I ever made it to Vladivostok, that kind of thing.
Beautiful, beautiful. And with your dad, over the years, have you shared your writing? I mean, would you show him your sort of like manuscript and vice versa?
I did it first, and then I realized it was bad because for a while he was quite famous and it was a bit of a shadow. So, and I realized that I wasn't ever going to make it on my own terms if I was always worrying about his opinion.
Yeah.
I think that's really important as a writer. You've got to break free. I think Picasso said, to become an artist, you've got to kill the father. Quite a famous phrase. And he didn't mean, literally, but he meant this psychological figure in your mind.
Yeah, of wanting to please them, of their approval, of
yes. Yeah, exactly. I mean, and Picasso's father was an artist. They're obviously not as good as Pablo Picasso. So I had to kind of kill my dad in a way and say, I'm not gonna give my manuscripts to him anymore. Much as I love him and respect his opinion, I had to do it under my own terms.
I thank you for taking us through sort of like that progression and choices that were made. Let's turn to the drowning hour. Now, things to do with water. I recently spoke to another author who set her novel way out in the Indian Ocean, and I have one of those, fascinations with something that absolutely scares me. I think drowning is the worst way I think that you could possibly die, but I love water and I love the sea. So thank you again. That idea of a novel that was mesmerizing, and at the same time, you could really understand the main protagonist's, although her reasons for fearing the body of water there, perhaps for different reasons, I think, than my own. Why this novel? What caused you to come to a point of setting a story on an island with a former quite swanky hotel and a protagonist who can't, or feels she can't leave the island?
A few things fed into that. So one of the ways I tend to start novels most of the time is location.
Okay.
that's what comes first for me. So, for the Ice Twins, I already knew of this marvelous little island off Skye, which really exists. Tiny place, belongs to a friend of mine, so I visited it, and I'd always thought, what a great place for a thriller, because you can only access it for an hour a day. And again, with the Drowning Hour, I was sent on assignment by a newspaper to East Anglia and to Essex, and I found a couple of islands in the Blackwater estuary. One's called OC Island, and there's a couple of others. One has a sort of hotel on it, and I thought, and with these huge, bleak Essex skies, though they can be also rather beautiful, these mud flats, these ancient Saxon roads. It's a you know, people diss Essex, but it actually can be a very atmospheric part of England.
Yeah, and a beautiful part as well. You know, I mean, even though you create menace around that place, you know, and by the skill of your writing, you know, around the characters and everything, but you know, there's a sense of, you know, I don't know, majestic nature and the power of nature.
Well, I'm glad that came through, and yeah, I mean, so that all fed into it. But also, I have to admit that you know, once I'd got my protagonist onto this island in this hotel, and of course I chose a hotel because I know travel really. I know hotels.
Yeah,
I know how it works. So that was an easy thing, the hotel. But as I was writing the book with this woman on this island trapped for various reasons, I was writing it in the lockdowns. So, you know, and for me, we all had different experiences in the lockdowns, but lockdown one was kind of nice for me. I was with a close partner in a lovely sunny place, and it was spring. But lockdown 2 and 3 were terrible. I hated them because I was on my own in a one-bed flat now, in this flat in Camden, which is great now. It's sunny, it's Camden, it's London, it's exciting. But in the winter of 2021, when everything was shut, on my own in a one-bed flat, I could see one friend once a week for an hour. I mean, you remember it. We all remember.
I do, yeah.
It was grotesque. It was horrible, and I was very depressed. But I realized I could get over some of this sadness by putting it into the book, because she's also locked down in her own way. She's trapped on an island. She goes round and round, which is what I did in the park. You know, I never want to see a duck ever again. I saw so many duck ponds.
Yeah,
we all do. We all do.
Yeah.
You know, and the terrible weather. You know, it was cold and it was bleak. So all these different currents flowed into the book to create a sense of her isolation.
Mm-hmm. And just to quote you, because I think this is this again sums up the book. You say, I write books where real places become menacing, yes, and where ordinary people experience something extraordinary. I just think that is a beautiful way to sum up your writing, and just, you know, please, readers, listeners, delve into this, and that extraordinary experience in a location that can be, well, scary and uncertain. It was good. If something like that can be good, of course it can. That's what the writing's all about. Yes. I have to ask, while I read online, and I don't know if the printed copy is the same, but at the start there is the image of the traditional Rider-Waite tarot deck, the Moon card.
Yeah.
I was fascinated. I mean, to start with that, and that just conjures up so many possibilities. Did the inclusion of that come at the start of writing the novel, or did it come when you were completed and you thought that would be fitting, that would work?
No, it came early on, because it also plays a certain role in the plot. Not crucial, but there are moments when it's very relevant. And also the character, it's based squarely on someone I know very well. One I won't say who or what.
Yes, of course.
A very good friend of mine in this book. So tarot cards made a lot of sense, because this person loves the tarot. And I do like to put images into my books sometimes, because they do add something.
Yeah.
And I mean, we go back to, like, people think, well, you shouldn't have them because the written word is enough. Well, Dickens had illustrations in his books, and they can be really powerful. Lewis Carroll, the famous illustrations.
Yeah.
They make it better. So I had In the Ice Twins, I had some photos of Scotland and the house on the island, and people loved them. And I've done that since, used photos. But this time I thought I'd do something slightly different. And I thought, to have a tarot card and also have it right at the beginning, as you say, because it immediately sets a mood. It's like a title sequence for a drama. You see, oh, what's this going to be about? It's a tarot card, It sets the reader up for something interesting.
Definitely, and that moon on the water, and I thought as well, with it being the traditional tarot as well, and not some of the more modern decks or anything like that. I thought
I love the Rider-Waite tarot. It's my favorite, probably. So I know tarot quite well. Also, as a boy, I was fascinated by the tarot, so it was another way of escaping from.
And all. I think, however you approach it, I think there is so much to learn and see and speak out from it, in storytelling and or like a prompt, even for creative writing.
Yes,
here's a prompt.
Because they are so mysterious and often very old, many hundreds of years old, these cryptic images, very evocative. And also they tell, they work because they speak of your own subconscious. They tell you what you're really thinking.
Yes.
And that's why they can be used for divinatory purposes, because they get into your head and your soul.
Yeah, totally. And it's almost like the coming, it folds back. I always think it just comes back, and you find that place to locate it. So I was gripped from the start, even before I started reading, thinking, oh, what is this? And of course it plays out. But I also wanted to ask you, do you have a fear of water?
In a word, no. In fact, the opposite. I love swimming. So that isn't there, but I do have. Do I have phobias, really? Actually, no. I'm fearless to the point of recklessness. I've done many stupid things in my life. I'm just finishing a memoir at the moment, which is, I tell you, when I was rereading it, it was just like all these crazy, stupid things I've done. Where it could have gone horribly wrong. I shouldn't be here. So I don't have phobia. So maybe I was trying to imagine myself into a very different mindset. Maybe that's what I was trying to do. What would it be like if you did have a phobia? And that's the woman in the book.
And I don't normally like to ask this question, because I think, you
can ask any question. I don't mind.
Thank you, Sean. But I am aware that authors and their powers of creating characters and scenarios to say, oh, you're this and yet you created that. But I was really struck by the way you drew and developed Hannah.
Okay.
And was she fully formed before you put her on the page, or did she develop with your writing?
Again, I've got to be careful, because I do draw upon real life experiences. So I'd say she was half formed by the time when I started writing it. But yes, I mean, this often I think it must happen to many authors. What happens to her in the book changes her in ways I hadn't quite anticipated. So so I'm thinking, oh, she has this kind of character. Then this is happening to her. So how would she really react to this? And you change as it goes along, because you've got to be true to the character you're creating. And they are malleable, but they're also there. If you're lucky, they have their own life. So she changed as the book evolved. That's true.
Lovely. Well, otherworldly, supernatural, different spaces, however one might see this, but fusing thriller or psychological thriller with maybe another style, thread, genre. Again, was it a conscious choice of bringing these elements together? And how did it work for you in blending these elements? Was it a very happy marriage, shall we say, or was it a bit rocky along the road?
It was definitely deliberate, and it was a deliberate choice for me and my publishers to go from the Tom Knox books, which themselves often have sort of esoteric or almost supernatural elements, but in a much more lurid and international archaeological way. So these are much more intimate domestic books. And when my publisher said, we think you should go into this area, and I thought, yeah, great idea. but I didn't want to do classic police procedurals or crime in the sort of normal sense, that there would be elements of that. So, and I wanted to, also, I'm just fascinated by the supernatural. I loved ghost stories as a kid, you know, and there aren't many great ghost stories, but when you find one, they're wonderful. You know, they stay with you. And also, of course, horror movies. One of my favorite movies is The Exorcist, which is terrifying. You know, I saw it when I was 13.
Yeah, it's like, we were all so keen. We all thought we really need to get to see this, because people are saying we shouldn't go and see it, and then we managed to see it, and it was like, I know now why they said we shouldn't go.
I was on a school trip to London. I was probably 13 or 14, and we snuck in to see The Exorcist at age 13, which is not really very advisable. No. But I remember being it was exhilarating, but I remember being genuinely petrified in my seat, and I never forgot it. So I've always loved that kind of thing, and you know, and I'm quite open in my beliefs. So there may be, you know, we may discuss this later, that there possibly are other worlds. I don't know, but and nobody knows. So I like to weave that enigmatic, we just do not know quality into these psychological thrillers, because it gives them a kind of richness, I think.
Yes, yeah, definitely. And again, without giving everything away, because if people haven't read the book, we really want them to do so. Do you write so that it, despite what it may appear, it can all be explained away at the end? Or do you like to leave things hanging in that doubt of, well, was it or was it not?
If you can hit that spot where you just don't know at the end, that's almost my ideal, really. If at the very end you still don't quite know what happened, then I think I'll have succeeded. That also does annoy some readers. I've got to be honest, because they want to know at the end, well, what happened, who was who, and why did they do that? And so I don't leave it too open, but I do like the element of ambiguity. And also, some people just do not believe in ghosts or anything to do with that.
Indeed.
And you want to, in a way, you don't want to alienate them. So I want to keep them on board as well. And you've got other people who are totally open to it. So it's good to have those themes for them. So yeah, I do tread quite a fine line between belief and disbelief, and you don't know at the end.
I really appreciate, the fact that as you craft your story, that you bear those things in mind, and weigh up, well, what will work, and not wanting to lose readers, because isn't that the thing as well, that good writing, if there's it's a shame if it loses people just because there's a certain element that it needn't lose people.
Yeah. I mean, the one thing I have learned is that you can't do anything horrible to animals. You've got to, and I don't want to.
No. Except the ducks in the mouth. No, not even the ducks.
Yeah, I can eat roast duck. That's not a problem. No. But yeah, don't do anything to animals. But yes, you don't want to alienate readers. You want to entertain everyone if you can. So yeah, I am totally aware of that. The good thing about psychological thrillers in this area is that the characters are generally quite terrified half the time. So they are mentally disturbed, they're upset, and they can be slightly unreliable narrators. So that gives you a nice area of vagueness which you can play with, I think.
And you mentioned The Exorcist, and it was a question that I prepared, not about The Exorcist, but about creating visual suspense as in contrast to suspense that is created by the written word. And I wondered, I suppose it's a bit of a loaded question to ask an author, which do you prefer? But do you think it's a harder task to create that tension through words rather than images? Basically,
yes, I think it is. In the same way that it's harder to make people laugh with the written word than it is as a comic on stage. Yeah, because so let's take comedy. With comedy, you've got the words, but you've also got the body language, the timing of the comic. You've got all these other things that can add to your amusement. And the same with creating fear. A film director can have a crashing noise, can have the darkness, can play with and tense music and so many things.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a lot easier for if you're working in, say, film, to create really intense emotions than it is with the written word. Though the written word also has great advantages in that the reader will create the world for themselves. So
yeah, exactly.
You've got to hint. When you're writing, you've got to leave little subtle discordant hints that slowly build up into a more menacing picture. That's what I've done. That's what I'd like to do. So, something can be slightly off in a scene and it's almost buried in the fourth sentence. You don't really notice it. Something, a bird lying dead or something even vaguer than that. You've got to keep it quite subtle. But those tend to add up and build to the sense of dread, something bad is going on here. But I like to keep it quite discreet, at least early on.
Now, the location, and as you said, the location for you is very important in creating the story. And so we have this island and we have this hotel. So could you tell us a little bit about the hotel, style, function, the situation of it?
Yeah, I mean, I've been a travel writer for decades, so I've literally been to thousands of hotels. So I know all kinds, from the grandest to the cheapest. And I love hotels though, because they're all, because they're full of people and stories, and they're a kind of, and they're an escape for all of us. You're in a hotel, it's fun. You're in somewhere different, and you've got a different view, and your life is in a different place. So I love them. So this hotel is called the Stanhope, and it's quite an old hotel. It's a Regency building, probably with medieval antecedents, on this slightly remote island in the River Blackwater. It became a hotel. It's got the island and the building have legends of pirates and smugglers attached to it, as does the real OC Island in Essex. And then the building becomes a hotel, and I think in the early 20th century becomes something like a place called Skindles, which people don't know about these days, but it was in Maidenhead, near London, where quite rich couples would head off there for naughty weekends and of adultery and champagne. So I wanted it to be a bit like that. It had a reputation for misbehavior in the 20s. Then it became very run down. And when the book joins the hotel, it's been bought by a really rich guy who's pumped in loads of money, and he has successfully turned it into a successful hotel again. Is getting rich guests coming in, but it still has this checkered history, as does the whole island, of smugglers and pirates and witches. So it's maybe not the best purchase, and people start to wonder, why did he buy this slightly spooky hotel?
There was one image as well that it's quite early on in the book, and it's the motorboat, the luxury motorboat that is seen, and who can it be, and who might it be, and what does that portend? That got me right at the beginning. I loved that. The Drowning Hour. Let's go with the title.
God, titles are hard. I'm
sure. So did this come after the book was written?
Oh yeah, totally.
Yeah.
But I don't like to do that, because I like it if I have a title straight away. Actually, that's not. I'm being slightly misleading. The title came about halfway through. So I've had both experiences. I've had titles that are great start. I had them from day one. I've had books that only get a title the day before publication almost. It's like, what are we going to call it? Because when you're working with this kind of fiction, there are certain kind of titles you can have and you can't have. I'm sure you know all this. Yeah. Authors must tell you. So you've got to be very careful with the title. It can't be too long. It can't be too exotic. And this one, with the hour, gave it a sense of time, and as you read the book, you realize time is a factor. She's only got so much time left, and in an unexpected way. And of course, it's about drowning, which gives you the sense of menace. And what is the theme of the book? It's this terrible fear of water, which he has for a certain particular reason. So yeah, and also drowning and hour have a nice little internal rhyme. So yeah, I liked it. And sometimes I don't like my titles. So, they're very tricky.
I also felt that it almost felt like, tradition, and now here comes the drowning, like here it comes again. Here's,
Yes. Oh, yes, of course, there is the about halfway through, after I'd found the title in my mind, I thought, oh, this could actually be a drowning current in the river. So yeah, the title in a strange way inspired quite a crucial plot line in the book, and changed the book halfway through. And this isn't, that's not a spoiler, you learn this quite early on.
Yeah.
There is this menacing tide, this rip tide surrounding this island, which tends to occur at a certain time of the day or the season of the year. So yeah, so the title unusually provoked a plot twist.
Beautiful, beautiful. Can I also say I really enjoyed, if one can say that, the romance at the beginning that Hannah has, that relationship with the chef that's elsewhere, and that he comes to visit, and again writing that relationship from her point of view. Very interesting.
Well, I'm glad you like him, because when I when I first wrote him, my editor said no, he's too horrible. So they said you've got to soften him, and they were quite right. Well, I've learned through many years, really listen to your editors. I'm very lucky to have a great agent and a great editor, and they're very wise. And my editor Jane said, no, he's a little bit too brash and uncaring, and it'll work much better as a romance and be more affecting for the reader if we rather like him at first and we like their romance. So I'm glad that worked for you. So because I definitely had to change that.
Yeah, it did. It felt, I don't know, compared to everything else that was happening, at least at the beginning of the book, it was like this was somewhere or someone, something that helped her, that grounded her, that that kept her steady.
It's one of the few things she has. Keeps her sane, and as I was trying to keep sane during lockdown. So yeah, that again is certainly inspired by my lockdown experience. A few friends that kept me whoa.
Another aspect of it that again struck me was the sense of the before and after. Comments made about when Hannah first started working there, and how people responded to her, and her colleagues and things like that. And then of course there is this after, and again people should read the book to know about the after. And I love that split back and forth. Now you said it's you can't harm animals, you mustn't do that. If I remember rightly, there is a rescued dog, is there not, in the tale? Yes. Yeah.
That's literally my save the cat moment. Have you heard the save the cat idea?
Yeah.
So and it's true. You do need a save the cat moment where you warm to a character, he or she has done something nice, and I was thinking, well, what's going to be my save the cat moment? I thought, well, actually, why not save a cat or save a dog?
Yeah.
Because I also wanted her to have a companion in the book, and for various reasons, which the reader will discover, it couldn't be a human being. I didn't want to be totally alone, so a dog made a lot of sense, and also married really nicely with the moon card of the Rider-Waite pack, because there's a dog in the card.
Yeah.
This is actually quite strange. Once I decided to use the tarot card, and particularly the moon card, I found that all these weird things in the book actually did really fit in with that card, which I hadn't really thought about. The fact it's got water in front of it, these two towers, and the dogs and the wolf, and it was like, and the moon. It was almost like it was predestined to be in this book. The tarot, the moon card from the major arcana. So yeah, I'm glad that she saved a dog. That's what
yeah. And I am thrilled that you say this. Anybody who's watched or listened to the to the program before knows that I am a firm believer in there are stories that need to be told. and you've been a conduit for that story.
Okay, that's good. Thank you.
And there is that correlation between the images and the message that we might find on that card, but also the story that you were telling. I mean, what is that?
That little tingle. I like the tingle.
Yes, I guess I've just had it. It's very nice because I didn't, of course, yeah. So thank you for the tingle. Okay, so we're talking thrillers, Sinister, and I just wondered for yourself, again, if this is a difficult question, I'm sorry, but do you have we talked about The Exorcist as well, but do you have a favorite Sinister tale, film, or series that for you evokes that sense of menace, unease, or dis-ease, as they call it?
I do have a few. I'm trying to remember, make sure I get the name of the author right. Have you heard of The Willows?
No.
I think this is right. Can you Google? It's called it's by Algernon Blackwood, I think.
The Willows.
The Willows.
Let's have a wee look. And why choose that one?
Because it does a lot of the things that I try to do. It conjures up a place. It's an island in the Danube where a bunch of holidaymakers end up camping for a couple of nights, and there are these really scary willow trees, and that's it. It's just a bunch of scary trees. But he does it so well. Is it him? Is it Algernon
It
Blackwood?
is, you are correct. Yeah.
Fantastic.
Yeah, The Willows by Algernon Blackwood. Yeah.
It's a short story, 10 pages long. I recommend it to all your listeners. It's fantastic. And in those 10 pages, with just a bunch of trees, he petrifies you. Because what is happening in these trees? And are they on the edge of another world? What is coming from behind the trees? And he just describes the turbulent way they move in the wind. And it's a work of genius in just 10 pages. One of those classic late Victorian Edwardian ghost stories. They were really good at that. They did them so
yes.
well.
Yeah.
The Monkey's Paw. Oh my God. It's just, I think it's 4 pages long. Do you know The Monkey's Paw?
Yes.
It must be one of the most frightening short stories ever written, I think. And
yeah. And to capture that in so short a time and evoke those feelings. Yeah. Back to the Drowning Hour, though.
Yeah.
Was there, when you write the end, well, it's never the end when you first write the end because of edits and things like that. But the whole of the novel, is there any aspect that you surprised yourself? Often but especially somebody who's used to writing, this is not a debut piece for you. And no. Was it like, oh my God, I did that? How did that happen? I didn't know that would work. And it has.
I was definitely surprised by it. But again, it's very hard to divorce that from the weirdness of lockdown. I think you've been speaking to writers since lockdown. I mean, I don't know if, are others saying it affected their writing? Or?
Yeah, there seems to be 2 camps.
Okay.
Roughly. That's a bit of a generalization, but on the one hand, there are people who said it acted like a validation of the way that I'd been living for, previously, because everybody else had to do what I'd been doing, which was lock myself away, and get on with life that
and
way.
Work from home, yeah.
And the other group, it was like, I just, the muse seemed to leave me. I had no headspace. I couldn't concentrate. Things, the stimulation of the outside world, wasn't there. So my writing didn't seem to flow.
Interestingly, I straddled both camps because at first, in lockdown 1, we had the sunny one. I couldn't write at all. It was fine because I was in a different space and a different place in my head, and it was okay. So I kind of enjoyed it. That weather helped, but I could not write a thing. No, the muse departed me then. Whereas for the Drowning Hour, when I came to lockdown 2 and 3, then the muse came back, and thank God it did, because one of the things that kept me sane was sitting down to write that every day and knowing I had a purpose to get up, rather than just stay in my bed for 7 weeks. I've got to get up and do something. It's this. I had a deadline, that helped. And so one of my emotions at the end of it was, I was kind of thankful for the book keep steering me through that, because that was a tough time in my life. And a lot of my angst went into the book, and the book by itself, kept me working and functioning and thinking. So that was good.
It's good. It's good. Okay, I'm aware of the time, and don't want to, we could talk for hours. I get this sense, and I hope one day we actually get to meet face to face
I hope
and
so.
and go deeper into these matters. But for readers, I wonder, other than, I hope you just have a really enjoyable read and that the book resonates and stays with you. Is there anything that you would like readers to take away from this novel?
Beware of smartphones. Because one of the themes in the book, I don't want to give too much away. It's quite difficult to talk about without doing that. But everybody you ever met is kind of on your smartphone.
Yeah.
Their voices, their photos, so if they disappear out of your life for any reason, they're still in there. And you got voice messages from them. And I've experienced this in real life, that they are still in your phone. You can hear their voice no matter where they've gone, whether they're still with us or not. They're in your phone, and that's quite freaky. And not just in the book, but in real life, I think.
Yeah.
So, and I think it's going to affect us as we go on, the way that people live on technologically for forever, almost.
Yeah, without a doubt that these things that many of us can no longer live without, they have changed our experience of interaction, living, socializing, how we enjoy culture. Well, so many different aspects.
Yeah,
so,
and also how we remember people, and how, because I think I heard the radio show that referring to this the other day, and a girl had lost her mother quite tragically, and she had all these saved voice messages from her mother on her phone, and she couldn't erase them because that was all she had. But she also couldn't bear the fact that her mum was still talking to her on the phone.
Yeah.
And that is very hard. It's a new way we have with people who may not be with us for whatever reason. And we've got to. Yeah, I'm not sure how. I'm sure we'll come to we'll live with it and get to know it. But it is very new and a little bit scary.
Yeah. Yes, just one of those extra challenges facing much of humanity.
Yes, but they are amazing as well, though, because they also in lockdown I learned how fantastic it is to have a smartphone where you can talk to a friend on the other side of the world at any time of the day. If I was feeling lonely at 2 a.m. I could talk to my brother in Peru. He's up and he would chat with me, and so that's the good side. There's a wonderful side as well.
Yeah, indeed, and to be the aspects definitely to be celebrated. I totally agree with you. Yeah, without a doubt. Well, Sean, it has been absolutely wonderful to spend this time with you, and thank you for the Drowning Hour, and for all that your main character Hannah goes through. And again, I would highly recommend the book. I really do hope we get to meet in person and talk further. Thank you so much.
Thanks a lot.
Okay, bye for now. Bye.